what is shown there to actually be what happens. I think that we're gonna need to look at the cost side, moving forward in 12 and 13, that we've got work to do, even as we move forward.
That was my thought exactly. I was just trying to justify it. Thank you.
Right.
So I have a question about that as well. Since we have ongoing issues that we're going to have to keep discussing for years to come, it begs the question as to whether or not we should, as much as I really like the ER&R fund being built up over time to be able to handle the bumps in the road, we already have that in essence in the reserves. Where if we needed to replace a lot of rolling stock right now, we could do that out of reserves, just appropriate out of reserves and say, all right, supplemental budget, pass it through, buy these essential equipment. But by us structurally putting it in there and building up that fund, what I'm seeing is that we're basically saying that it's cheaper now to put it into that ER&R fund than it would be later at some other time. The deficits keep increasing from 12 to 13. And there's a part of me that just wonders whether or not this really would be what assumptions we're making about the value of the dollars we're just putting in the ER&R fund versus just assuming that we're going to appropriate them out of reserves. Has there been any discussion about whether we're assuming that it's going to be cheaper to put that money away now in the ER&R fund versus just saying, let's try to keep the budget on the deficit as low as possible and just replace the rolling stock as it comes up?
Not a conversation specifically about that notion that you bring up. How we would invest those funds, I think, would be the same wherever they're housed in terms of our accounting structure. I think really what's motivating in fact, I know that what's motivating the establishment of the ER&R fund is just to get Washougal into a best practice around planning for rolling stock and technology capital needs. You've used the term sinking fund, depreciating assets fund, planning for the future. It's more of an accounting scenario than it is a strategy around value, present day value versus future value.
Right. The reason why I bring that up is because a thought came to my mind about this, that if every time we get one of these budget, or I should say budget requests or requests for appropriation for something, and one of the first questions that you're looking for is the budget? Yes, the budget. Okay, then I'm okay with it. So if we put that money into an ER&R fund, we're saying in our minds, it's spent. This money is just spent. If a request comes up for something that would be paid out of this money, it's spent, we don't have to struggle over that. What concerns me about this is that even though I know our department heads have been doing an incredibly good job at just deferring a lot of expenditures, maybe beyond what they should have at times, to their credit, still, if we're looking at bigger and bigger deficits going into the future, if we don't review those expenditures every time they come up and say, well, you know what, this is coming out of general fund reserves, do we really want to do that right now, or are we going to cut this level of service for this item? Versus saying, it's spent, it's okay, it's budgeted, it's okay. See what I'm saying? I mean, it's just a different level of thinking about it.
Michael, are you thinking the amount that gets up to the 600,000?
Well, I'm just saying, as we see this fund, it might make us appropriate money out of that fund more quickly than we would have out of reserves. And if it's just an accounting maneuver to put the money into the funds, I wonder if we're structurally setting ourselves up for spending more money than we would have if we had thought of it as just reserves.
I think the point you're getting at is the scrutiny that the staff and administration and this council would apply to rolling stock and technology purchase is going to be diminished because it's a foregone conclusion that it's appropriated because we've got this depreciation schedule and we're going to do what we do.
Right.
I think that's a risk. I think the way that we would mitigate that risk is by the policies that we would set around those depreciation schedules and updates and check-ins on that policy and the status of the fund and the status of our overall financial picture and decision-making potentially around transfers or slowing down in terms of those purchases and otherwise using those funds. I think that would be what I would propose to help to maintain the scrutiny I think that you're looking for.
Well, and you certainly still have the ability and the flexibility to pass on those items or not. In the case of 2011, where we're proposing to move $600,000 over to that fund. On the other side, in the budgets, we're only asking for the appropriation to spend 411, something like that, for actual pieces of equipment. So in order to spend that additional amount up to $600,000, we'd have to come back anyway, because it wouldn't be appropriated in the budget as far as expenditures. One of the problems, one of the challenges that I can see if we look at it the way that it has been looked at, is a situation that we're in now, where we have equipment that is so far beyond its aging point that it becomes more of a liability to the city, not only repair cost and to keep them operating, but for the operators that are operating them themselves. One of the reasons that I wanted to move us towards going towards the ER&R fund, and again, it doesn't do anything. I was going to say, is so that philosophically, as a council and as a city, we're planning for those purchases to whatever degree we need to. And we know that at some point we're going to spend those funds, but we're making those conscious decisions that that is going to happen and that we're planning for them adequately. One of the tough things to see, especially on the aging of some of the equipment, is some of the comments from department heads where it was almost like they would get taken to task to bring them up that, golly, I need, $100,000 for a forklift that, or a front end loader and backhoe that is so far out of date that it doesn't make sense that it's even still operating. But they've got the mentality that we can't go to that general fund, we can't go to that reserve, we can't go to that reserve, to the point where we've put ourselves into a fairly ugly position in order to have to spend that in 1 year. John?
Once we create this fund, we can't ever transfer that money back to the general.
Absolutely you can. You can grab that money any day of the week.
It's not statutorily constrained or restricted, it's your accounting policy if you adopt it as a fund.
Dave?
From my standpoint, I understand your concern. To me, it's worth the risk to plan for these expenditures and to put that money away every year. Because otherwise, we're standing there like we are now saying, well, how do we fund this?
Yeah.
We've let it go to the point where we have to use reserves to do it. This is the last year I want to be in this position.
Yeah, the challenge, and I agree with you philosophically that we do need to put money away, but the problem is we're dealing with less money coming in than we're spending each year, and it gets worse from 2011, 12, 13. So, I mean.
Currently.
Yeah, I mean, well, with our current projections, that's what we're expecting. And we don't really know what the 13 budget's going to look like. We're just throwing those curves up on the screen. So as a policy, yeah, I agree. And just like with the family's household budget, you want to put money away in savings for